In the year 1967, a man found himself deep within the solitude of a Canadian forest on a quest for valuable minerals. Suddenly, he was jolted by the resonating cackles of a flock of geese nearby. As he instinctively looked up, something else caught his eye, an anomaly that would forever be etched in his memory. The next 45 minutes would alter the course of his life in ways he would have never imagined. Several hours later at 3 p.m., a policeman on patrol in Falcon Beach, Manitoba, spotted the same man walking along the highway. The man, later identified as Stephen Michalak, stood out because he wore a jacket but no shirt. As the officer approached, Michalak waved eagerly, but then suddenly yelled for him to stay back, claiming he might be carrying some kind of disease or radiation. Despite the officer's attempts to help, Michalak refused any examination. He insisted he had burns on his chest and hat, puzzling the officer. What made it even more perplexing was that Stephen didn't smell of alcohol, though his appearance suggested he might have been through some ordeal. Join us as we delve into one of the most credible accounts of paranormal phenomena. If you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. Born in Poland to a police chief of a small town, Stephen's early life was marked by the tumultuous events of World War II. In 1939, he joined the intelligence section of the military police, his loyalty unwavering to the Polish government. When the Polish army fell, he became a partisan, resisting the Nazi occupation. His defiance came at a heavy price, a year and a half of incarceration in the notorious Gross Rosen concentration camp. Liberation finally came in 1945 with the defeat of Nazi Germany. In the aftermath of war, Stephen built a new life, marrying and raising 2 sons and a daughter. In 1949, he immigrated to Canada, eventually settling in Winnipeg. To support his family, he worked as an industrial mechanic in a company, but his true passion lay in the thrill of amateur prospecting. On May 19, 1967, Stephen boarded a Greyhound bus to Falcon Lake, staying in a motel to get an early start prospecting for minerals the next day. At 5:30 a.m., he left with his instruments, crossing the Trans-Canada Highway into the pine forest. It was a beautiful, clear day without a cloud in the sky. At 9 a.m., Stephen found a suitable spot with a rock formation and a flock of nearby geese. Though initially startled, the geese soon paid him no mind as he worked undisturbed. Around noon, as Stephen chipped away at the rocks, an eerie sound from the geese caught his attention. To his astonishment, 2 cigar-shaped objects with a scarlet-red glow descended from above, their shape morphing into ovals as they drew nearer. Their perfectly coordinated descent, maintaining an exact distance between them, struck Stephen as strange. They seemed to behave as a single object. Suddenly, the object farther from Stephen halted mid-air, while the other continued its descent, landing on a flat rock surface some 160 feet away. The airborne craft hovered for 3 minutes before shooting upwards at indescribable speed in absolute silence, changing colors as it disappeared into the clouds. The landed craft exhibited a mesmerizing array of colors, transitioning from red to grayish red, then to gray, and finally resembling polished stainless steel with a golden glow. It was about 40 feet in diameter and 11 feet tall. Stephen, frozen in awe and still on his knees with his hammer, observed an opening emitting a blinding violet light that stung his eyes. It was so intense that it cast its hues on the ground, despite being midday. After some minutes, Stephen gathered the courage to get closer to take a better look. He had never looked at anything like this before. He figured it might be an experimental aircraft from the Air Force, but from where he was standing, he could see no markings on the silver hull. Waves of warm air emanated from the craft. I heard a soft murmur, like the whirl of a tiny electric motor running very fast. I also heard a hissing sound as if the air had been sucked into the interior of the craft, Stephen would later recall. Struggling to comprehend the scene unfolding before him, he was overwhelmed by a mix of excitement and fear. At that moment, Stephen wished he had a camera to capture the moment, but all he had was a paper and pencil. This is what he drew. As Stephen approached within 60 feet of the craft, he discerned what sounded like 2 distinct human voices amid the soft hum of machinery. He got excited as he was convinced these were human voices, so he went closer and shouted, "Okay, Yankee boys, having trouble? Come on out and we'll see what we can do about it," but received no response. Stephen called out in various languages, assuming the craft was an experimental aircraft with human occupants, but still received no response. Stephen was perplexed, but undeterred. He ventured closer, noting the craft's seamless steel construction and the intensity of the violet light emanating from within. The craft appeared to be made of some sort of steel, but there were no joints or weldings anywhere. The outer surface was highly polished and looked like colored glass, with light reflecting off of it. It formed a spectrum with a silver background as the sunlight hit the sides, Stephen wrote. After some minutes had passed, and with curiosity getting the better of him, Stephen put on his green-lensed goggles and stuck his head in through the opening from which the intense violet light emanated. Inside, a maze of lights greeted him, some tracing horizontal and diagonal paths, others pulsating. It all seemed very random to him. He noted the substantial thickness of the walls, nearly 20 inches across. But before he could make sense of it all, panels slid shut with startling abruptness, sealing the aperture and leaving him locked outside once more. Surveying the craft's surface, Stephen noticed what appeared like a ventilation panel. It was composed of small circular holes. Each was about 3/16 of an inch in diameter. He attempted to touch the side of it with his gloved hand, only to recoil from the intense heat. Suddenly the craft tilted, and a searing pain engulfed him as a beam of heat erupted from the panel, igniting his clothes. In a panic, he tore off his burning shirt, but not before suffering severe burns to his chest. When Stephen looked up again, the craft was already above the treetops. It was changing colors, just like other one when it took off. Moments later, the craft vanished into the sky, leaving him alone with his injuries. Little did he know, in that moment of bewilderment, the aircraft had left behind possible physical evidence of its presence, evidence that would soon be examined by experts, yielding perplexing results. Stephen stood there for some time, trying to rationalize what he had just witnessed. The odor that reminded me of an odor of burning electric motor mixed with a strong smell of sulfur still hung in the air, he later wrote. After gathering his belongings, he noticed his compass whirling erratically as if affected by a powerful magnetic force before settling back to normal operation. Abandoning any thought of further prospecting, Stephen made his way to the craft's landing site. Immediately upon stepping onto the rock, he was struck by nausea and a severe headache. Peculiarly, the surface was devoid of any debris, no twigs, pebbles, or other scattered matter. As the nausea and headache intensified, culminating in vomiting and a feeling of profound weakness, Stephen cut short his inspection, alarmed by these unnatural afflictions. The symptoms persisted on his journey back to the motel, with repeated bouts of vomiting and a worsening headache. Disturbing red marks had also appeared on his chest, which continued to burn. Reaching the highway, thoughts raced through Stephen's mind. Would others dismiss his account as a figment of his imagination? Hoping for medical attention, he sought out the RCMP detachment in Falcon Lake, but the constable seemed unconvinced by his brief story. Mustering his remaining strength, Stephen made it to the motel. Though fearing contamination, he opted to remain outdoors in the nearby woods, recognizing the potential symptoms of radiation poisoning. Concerned about permanent disability or health repercussions, he eventually ventured inside to request help, but no doctors were available. Retreating to his room, Stephen called his wife, arranging for their son to collect him at the Winnipeg bus stop. After a long wait, his son picked him up at 10:15 p.m., taking Stephen directly to the Misericordia Hospital. Initially, he provided excuses for the chest burns, attributing them to aircraft exhaust, though most were only first degree in severity. Over the next day, the lingering stench in his lungs and continued pain plagued him, though the vomiting finally subsided. Unable to keep anything down, he forgoed drinking. The Winnipeg Tribune interviewed Stephen the following day, marking the start of intense media scrutiny and harassment. For days, he had no appetite, resulting in significant weight loss. Official investigations by the RCMP and RCAF soon followed, with probing questions about his personal life and the reason for his presence in the woods. On May 22nd, a doctor referred Stephen to the Atomic Research Center in Pinawa, Manitoba for radiation testing. Though told he showed no signs of radiation exposure or immediate danger, his health gradually improved afterwards. However, on June 10th, a new series of perplexing symptoms emerged. Blisters appeared on his chest near his throat, accompanied by a V-shaped rash extending from his chest to his ears, which eventually cleared up with treatment, though his medical odyssey was not yet over. 5 months after the bizarre incident, on September 21st, Stephen had seemingly resumed his normal life when an intense burning sensation around his neck and chest abruptly manifested while he was at work. The pain rapidly escalated, and upon reaching the first aid room, his body swelled, large red spots forming where he had been burned by the craft. His skin turned violet, and the swelling became so severe that his hands ballooned. Losing his vision, he lost consciousness, but was taken to the Misericordia Hospital, where remarkably the symptoms dissipated by 9 p.m. He was released the following day at noon. Determined to find the site, Stephen returned twice with different groups, including RCAF members, but initially to no avail. It seemed to have vanished. On the third attempt, aided by someone who had contacted him after the event, they finally located it. After 6 hours of searching, the craft's outline on the ground was still visible, a circle of about 10 feet in diameter. Close to it were the remains of Stephen's burnt shirt and a forgotten tape measure. We also discovered that the branches of trees in the area where the craft came down had withered away and died, while all around the trees were flourishing normally, Stephen recounted. Subsequent examinations detected low levels of radiation, though not dangerously so. While the RCMP and RCAF collected soil and rock samples, their findings were never made public. Additional samples were sent to the University of Colorado and the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, APRO, but again, no official word surfaced. Other sightings emerged, including a 13-year-old girl from Winnipeg whose sketch resembled Stephen's account. 2 boys also reported seeing something near Falcon Lake around noon on May 20th, the day of the incident. In fact, there were about 20 reports from the area within a month before and after Stephen's experience. During another excursion to the site with an engineer friend named Marty, they investigated the radiation source at the landing area's center. Using a Geiger counter, they found a long, narrow smear, leading Marty to speculate that the radiation originated from beneath the rock itself. After hours of chipping away with his hammer, Stephen uncovered tiny metallic bits that appeared to have been molten, jokingly wondering if they had fallen from the craft. They eventually excavated 2 long metal pieces, about 4 inches each, in a zigzag pattern conforming to the rock's gaps. The Geiger counter confirmed their radioactivity, and subsequent analysis revealed a high silver content of 93% and 96%, along with copper and cadmium. However, further analysis yielded contradictory findings. One determined that the only radioactivity stemmed from a loose layer of fine-grained, uranium-containing minerals, easily removed by washing and brushing. In contrast, another investigation implicated radium as the culprit. Some people even speculated that the radioactive metal had been deliberately poured onto the site, though the motive behind such an act remained unclear. Plagued by recurring red bumps on his abdomen and headaches, Stephen eventually registered as an outpatient at the renowned Mayo Clinic at the urging of family and friends. After undergoing 2 weeks of extensive testing, including psychiatric evaluation, the report was favorable. I found no evidence of delusions, hallucinations. I can find no overt evidence of significant mental or emotional illness, wrote the examining psychiatrist. Gradually, the spots on his chest faded, and the headaches and fainting spells disappeared completely, bringing an end to his bizarre, unexplained ordeal. The Falcon Lake Incident stands as one of the most perplexing and well-documented cases of a claimed UFO encounter. Stephen Michalak's detailed account, corroborated by physical evidence and the onset of inexplicable physiological symptoms, defies conventional explanation. Despite intense investigations by authorities and experts, the nature of the craft he witnessed, the source of the peculiar radiation detected, and the bizarre after-effects on his health remain shrouded in mystery. Remarkably, Stephen never sought fame or notoriety from his experience. He remained steadfast in his account, never embellishing or altering the details. Prior to the incident, he harbored no particular interest in or belief about UFOs. His perspective was one of neutrality, acknowledging their potential existence without being consumed by the subject. Even after his harrowing encounter, he did not become an evangelist for the UFO community, understanding that others may choose to believe or dismiss his claims. While some theories have been proposed, no definitive conclusions have been reached regarding the Falcon Lake incident. Whether Michalak's experience was an encounter with an extraterrestrial craft or something entirely different, it has cemented its place as a captivating enigma that continues to fuel speculation and intrigue decades later. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like and subscribe. Until next time.